Self-experimentation by scientists is nothing new, but now some are pushing for self-experimentation data to be reported publicly and used more systematically to aid scientific progress. WSJ reporter Shirley Wang joins us from London to discuss. Hi, Shirley. From your reporting, would you say that self-experimentation by scientists is on the rise or simply coming out of the shadows?
It could be a little bit of both. Scientists say that it's easier than ever to self-experiment because there's a lot more information out on the internet, there's a lot of ways to get information that perhaps previously was a little bit more difficult. So scientists and people in the public can gain better access to information about medicines that, for instance, aren't yet approved. But there definitely seems to be a push to make this information more public, to actually utilize it, because, as you said, there's been a long history of scientists who've self-experimented, but traditionally it's been pretty quiet. And so scientists now are saying, if we don't talk about that data, then that data that was, even if it's the case that it was just one scientist, that's lost. So if we can harness that and make it public and discuss it, that could be really useful information.
It certainly can be cumulative, can't it? Now, an individual case report isn't considered nearly rigorous enough, correct? What is the gold standard for drawing any sort of conclusions about the way a drug or technology or even a procedure will affect the broader population?
Absolutely. So generally, before you want something approved, it should be tested on a number of people. You want to make sure that it's safe and it's effective for a whole group of people. So clearly, one individual, it just isn't enough. However, the idea that if you have some people testing the medicines early on and using that information to perhaps make the testing safer for a wider group of people, or potentially even a smoother process for testing, again, when you get into a larger group of people, that's where self-experimentation and these small case reports could be particularly useful and informing the larger trials later on.
It certainly makes sense. And you spoke to several scientists who regularly perform self-experimentation. What do they say they would like to do with all of their information, all their materials?
It depends. Some of them who are using information looking at their own genome, they have already made the information public so that others can look at the data and try to analyze it and see if it could be helpful in, for instance, comparing their data to another sample. Other scientists are taking compounds that aren't yet approved for a particular use, or that there's some evidence that it might be helpful, but again, it's sort of early days, and they say they want to take it because they feel like, if they're helping to develop a drug, it wouldn't sort of the best way of testing confidence be if they themselves took it. And the idea being that if you ask somebody who's developing a drug, hey, will you take this if you could, and they said no, that might be a red flag.
So obviously, scientists aren't the only ones performing self-experiments. Patients are doing this more and more, as you said, getting information off the internet. So what do ethicists say about all of this? Is it considered ethical?
Well, one of the big issues is about privacy and confidentiality. So if you are promising people that you take this, have your genome sequenced or take this compound, and then the data will remain private, then that could be an ethical consideration, because especially in the case of genetic information that becomes used in a database, that can be difficult to protect someone's identity. So one approach, which George Church, a geneticist, has taken, is that basically in his project to encourage people to put up their private genomic information, is he doesn't promise that their identities will be kept secret. He's saying that this information, you're helping science, it's being made public, but you don't necessarily have a guarantee that your identity will be kept secret. And so that's one way of addressing one of the ethical challenges when it comes to this type of work.
And so you're meant to sign many releases because it could also affect relatives, correct?
Absolutely, especially with genomic information. It's not just about you as an individual, but could be your relatives or your children. And so you want to make sure that they're on board with that as well.
Absolutely. Shirley Wang, thank you so much for all that information.